Welcome back to the farmstead. We have spent several weekends getting the garden ready for planting. Now, this is our big garden, which is about 30 by 40 feet, and we have it covered with this woven ground cover that we got from Grower Solutions. Now, in this ground cover, we have burned holes to plant each of the plants that we want to plant. And over the late summer and fall and winter, they have grown some weeds up through there. So on this day, Laura and I are getting started pulling out the weeds. And boy, it was a chore. So here on this side is where we put some of my larger plants like squash and pumpkins and things. And down the road where you see us working there is where we put tomatoes. And we have had good success trellising our tomatoes on these cattle panels. And I've got a couple cattle panels on 3 different rows. And I prefer to grow indeterminate varieties of tomatoes, which bear fruit all season long, and they end up getting pretty tall and lanky. So being able to trellis them on these cattle panels really helps keep them in good shape. And that way I can trim up underneath them and keep the airflow going around them to help prevent some diseases. Now, about this time, Laura had given up on me and headed back into the house, but I still had some to do, so I kept working. Now, again this year, I am planning to do a whole row of San Marzanos as paste tomatoes, but I'm also going to do some good varieties of slicing tomatoes, as well as a couple of cherry tomatoes. I have really liked using this woven ground cover to help control the weeds. Now, it still doesn't look like the weeds are controlled, but they are. It keeps them from growing up so much on the rows. And you do get some coming through the woven part, but if you really stay on it, they're easier to maintain and keep at bay. Now, this was a different day when not only Laura was there, but Sam and Dan were there too. And this is Sam, and he really loves to garden. He's helping me take down my old cucumber trellis because it had gotten weathered and was broken. And we're going to put up a new one for our cucumbers that we're going to plant this year. Now, all of these weeds came out pretty easily. It had rained for a few days, and so I purposely waited until after the rain to try to get them out. But I will eventually clean out all of the weeds and sweep off all of the dirt. Any kind of dirt that you leave on top of this ground cover will attract seeds, and the seeds will eventually sprout into other things that you don't want it to. So once we get everything in place, I will get my good broom and sweep everything off. Laura's got the leaf blower there, but it wasn't doing much good on that day, but she was sure giving it a try. And even Dan took a whirl at it, but it just wasn't working that day. Weed pulling got to be a little monotonous for them, so we moved on to something a little more productive. We're going to plant some flowers that I had sprouted for my little flower bed here. We've got some marigolds and I think some cosmos and just a variety of a few things that gave them a little more sense of we've really accomplished something because I could see what I planted instead of just pulling things up. So Dan and Sam filled up my bird feeder there for me. The little birds sure do love having that. I had bought each of them a pair of gloves just their size and some little tools just their size. And I'm hoping that the time we spend together will foster a love of gardening in each of them. I truly treasure the time I spent with my grandfather, who was a gardener. I hope that the takeaway will be the love of spending time outdoors together. And maybe getting our boots a little muddy. This is what it looked like when we headed inside for lunch. These kids are a hoot. After we made lunch, decided to take them over to the park. And there we found this great old big turtle. Delivering them home was a quiet ride for me, anyway. They slept the whole time. Sam was back over this last weekend to help me plant the tomatoes. We got 3 rows planted. It sure does feel good to be well on our way to gardening this year. Now, you can't see it in the time lapse, but I fell off my little cart there. And his eyes got about as big as saucers. But he helped me up, and I moved to my camping chair after that. So here we are in the garden. We still got a lot of weeds to clean up. Don't pay attention to those. But we've also had a very good weekend of planting some tomatoes and tomatillos and some other things. And those I want to walk around and show you. All right, let's start at this end with our San Marzanos. We've got a whole row of San Marzanos. Now what I've done with each of these is I drilled out a hole with my little auger that I bought, and for a potting soil mixture I used a good organic potting soil, which I added worm castings and some eggshells that I had saved and cooked. And each of these have been planted with that. Now this right here on this end is alpacas. And we'll go down here to where we have a batch of, let's see, Kellogg's Breakfast and some Abe Lincolns and some Dr. Witchies. And all of these are fixing to get a good watering. We gave him one this morning when we planted. We're going to give him another one now. The next row over here, these are Floridates. Up until we get to up here, tomatillos. Now I'm so excited about those tomatillos. I've never had tomatillo plants that looked this good. So I am very excited. And the other things we got planted out here were some patty pan squash. We have 3 of those, and we're going to trellis those this year to try to keep the squash bugs and the vine borers out of them. And then over here we have watermelon, crimson sweet watermelon, 3 spots of those, and I think there's actually 2 plants in each spot. And then some patty pan squash. No, fairy tale pumpkins. Fairy tale pumpkins. Definitely needing a drink of water, so we'll get that going. Now here along this trellis is my puny looking little cucumbers. And they are pitiful. But I have replanted some seeds, so I will probably try to replace these. I think what happened was, in the batch of potting soil that I made up for these, I added some fertilizer, and I think I added too much. So this may be my fault. But we're going to keep watering them, see what survives, and then replace them with some others. Let's do a little update on the raised barrels while we're at it. Now these have just had a good drink of water. Now here we have some radishes with some marigolds, a couple things of cauliflower, Wasn't sure that was coming on. That might be broccoli. Whatever it wasn't looking good, so I replaced the third one I've had in here with a little geranium kiss tomato. Same thing over here. A couple little geranium kiss tomatoes, radishes, marigolds, and this is a yellow pear tomato. And it is an indeterminate, and we'll have to put a trellis behind it if it comes on. Now this is a blend of all kinds of flowers for bees and butterflies. Our basil that I didn't think was going to survive the frost survived the frost, and it's trying. Here we have some teddy bear sunflowers, some cilantro, some dill, garlic, carrots. I think we've got one big carrot in here. And it looks like it might be a white one, so we'll have to pull that pretty soon. I gave all my onions a haircut so that they continue to work on making onions instead of greens. The potatoes are doing incredible in those buckets. We may have a dump truck full of potatoes by the time we're done. This is broccoli. Wasn't sure it was going to come on, but it might try. And we might get one or two off of it before it gets too hot. And then back here in the back we have cauliflower, some radishes, and some marigolds. I think we're off to a great start, and I'm really looking forward to see how everything comes along in the weeks to come. We're supposed to get some rain in the next couple of days, and that'll make everything happy, and then get hot again. And hopefully by that time our peppers will be ready to go out. So stay tuned. We'll see you soon.